She married a man for a visa and found her freedom instead. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It was supposed to be just paperwork. In a quiet cafe tucked between skyscrapers in Manhattan, the soft hum of conversation mixed with the scent of roasted coffee beans. Anna Nguyen sat by the window, her fingers trembling as she stared at the email glowing on her laptop screen. The message from Immigration Services was short but devastating. Her student visa would expire in 30 days. After 4 years studying art in New York, she was about to lose everything: her education, her dream, her life here. Her reflection in the glass showed a young woman fighting tears, her black hair falling loose around a tired face. The coffee in front of her had gone cold. She whispered to herself, 30 days, and then it is over. That was when a man's voice interrupted her thoughts. You look like you just lost a war, he said calmly. Anna blinked, startled. The man standing beside her table wore a dark tailored suit, his tie perfectly knotted. His presence carried quiet authority. Ethan Carter. She did not know his name yet, but everyone in this cafe seemed to notice him. I am sorry, she said quickly, wiping her eyes. Rough day. He nodded, glancing at the laptop screen. Visa problems? She froze. How do you were reading an email with the subject line, Notice of Status Termination. Hard to miss. His voice was low, measured, without judgment. She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Yeah, that obvious, huh? He took the empty seat across from her without asking. What if I told you there is a way to fix that? Anna frowned. Excuse me? Ethan's gaze did not waver. Marry me. Think of it as a deal. For a moment, the entire cafe seemed to fall silent. Anna stared at him, half thinking this was a cruel joke. You do not even know me. I do not have to, he replied evenly. You need a visa. I need a wife on paper. It is business. She laughed nervously. You are insane. Maybe, he said, leaning back. But it would solve both our problems. He slid a crisp white card across the table, his name embossed in silver: Ethan Carter, CEO of Carter Holdings. Anna blinked, recognizing the company from headlines. He was serious. Why me? She whispered. Because you have nothing to gain and everything to lose, he said quietly. That makes you honest. She stared at the card, her pulse racing. He stood up, adjusting his cufflinks. Think about it. You have 30 days. Then he walked out, leaving her in stunned silence, the city's noise rushing back through the cafe windows. Outside, snow began to fall, a soft, fragile storm, the kind that could erase everything in white. Anna sat frozen, the card still between her fingers, the words replaying in her head. Marry me. Think of it as a deal. She whispered to herself, almost afraid to breathe, what kind of man says that so easily? And yet, beneath the disbelief, something inside her flickered: not love, not even hope, but a strange, desperate curiosity that would change her life forever. 3 nights passed before Anna saw him again. She had convinced herself that Ethan Carter had been joking, that no man in his right mind would offer marriage to a stranger. But on the 4th day, while she was sketching in a corner of Bryant Park, a shadow fell over her notebook. She looked up. Ethan stood there, hands in his coat pockets, his expression calm but unreadable. You have been thinking about it, he said simply. Anna's heart skipped. You were serious? I do not waste words, he replied. He sat on the bench beside her and handed her a folder. Inside were legal documents, already filled with her name, her birth date, even the address of her apartment. You looked up my records, she asked, her voice sharp. No, he said. My lawyer did. If we are going to do this, everything must be clean and legal. She exhaled in disbelief. You make it sound like a business transaction. That is exactly what it is, he said quietly. You keep your status. I keep my company. No feelings. No strings. Just terms and conditions. Anna closed the folder, the pages trembling in her hands. Why me, Ethan? His eyes softened slightly. Because you are honest. You looked terrified that day, but you still told the truth. I trust people who do not hide behind pretense. He stood, offering his hand. Come with me. I will explain everything. The cab ride to his office felt surreal. The Carter Holdings building rose 50 floors above the city, glass and steel reflecting the winter sun. Inside, the lobby buzzed with people in suits and heels. Anna followed him to the private elevator, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. When they reached the top floor, a panoramic view of Manhattan stretched before her. You own all this, she murmured. Technically, he said, glancing at the skyline, but I might lose it. He handed her another document, thicker than the first. My late father's estate has a clause. I must be married by the end of this fiscal quarter to maintain controlling interest. Otherwise, everything transfers to my cousin, Daniel. He has been circling for years. Anna frowned. So you just need a wife for show? Precisely. Someone who will not complicate things. Someone who will walk away when it is over. He paused, then added, you can set your price. I will cover tuition, rent, whatever you need. But there is one condition: you must stay for 1 year. The words hit her like cold wind. And what happens after a year? We dissolve the marriage. Cleanly. No drama. Ethan turned toward the window, his reflection merging with the city lights. I do not believe in love, Miss Nguyen. It only creates leverage. Anna stared at him, anger rising in her chest. Then why marry at all? Because the law requires it, he said. And because you need me as much as I need you. The truth stung. She hated that he was right. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft flakes swirling against the glass. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan said, if you agree, we sign tomorrow. My lawyer will handle the rest. He walked her to the elevator. As the doors closed, he looked at her once more. You have 30 days left. Do not waste them. That night, Anna lay awake in her small apartment, the city humming outside her window. She could almost hear his voice echoing in her mind. Marry me. Think of it as a deal. Her sketchbook lay open on the table, a rough pencil drawing of a faceless man holding an umbrella over her head. She whispered into the dark, what am I doing? But even as she asked, a decision had already begun to take shape in her heart. Somewhere between fear and survival, curiosity turned into resolve. Tomorrow, she would go back to that building. Tomorrow, she would sign. The next morning, Anna stood outside Carter Holdings, clutching her coat against the wind. Her stomach twisted with doubt, but she forced herself inside. The receptionist led her to a sleek conference room where Ethan was already waiting with his lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, a man with silver hair and sharp eyes. Ethan looked composed, almost indifferent, as he gestured toward the chair across from him. Sit, Miss Nguyen. Let us make this official. Anna sat, her pulse pounding as Reynolds slid a thick stack of papers across the table. This is the marriage agreement, the lawyer said. You will review and sign each section. No intimacy is required, no emotional commitment expected. It is purely legal. After 12 months, both parties may dissolve the marriage without penalty. Anna skimmed the clauses, her eyes catching on the details: monthly stipend, shared residence, confidentiality terms, and one handwritten note at the bottom: Rule 3, no personal interference. She looked up. You wrote this part yourself? Ethan nodded. Boundaries keep things clean. Cold, she murmured. He met her gaze evenly. Efficient. The pen in her hand felt heavier than it should. She hesitated, then signed. The sound of the pen scratching paper echoed like thunder in her ears. Ethan signed next, his movements precise. When it was done, Reynolds smiled faintly. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. The words made Anna flinch. Ethan stood, buttoning his jacket. The ceremony will be civil, at the courthouse tomorrow. I will send a driver. Bring your passport. Anna followed him out, her heart racing. As they stepped into the hallway, she blurted, Do you ever feel afraid of what you are doing? He glanced at her, almost amused. Fear is for people who have something to lose. And you do not? Not anymore, he said quietly. The elevator doors closed between them with a soft chime. The next day moved like a blur. The courthouse smelled of paper and old wood, and the judge's voice echoed in the high-ceilinged room. Anna wore a simple white dress borrowed from a thrift shop. Ethan wore a gray suit that looked carved to his frame. When the judge asked if they took each other as husband and wife, they both answered yes, their voices steady but distant. A few minutes later, it was done. The officiant handed them the certificate, and Ethan turned to her with a polite nod. Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Carter. His tone was formal, detached, but something in his eyes flickered, something she could not name. Outside, snow drifted down like quiet applause. A black town car waited at the curb, and a uniformed driver opened the door for them. The ride to his estate took an hour through winding roads and tall pines. When the gates finally opened, Anna gasped. The mansion rose like a monument, white columns, stone lions, and windows that glowed gold against the gray sky. It looked more like a museum than a home. Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, paintings older than her grandparents. She followed Ethan through the grand foyer until they reached a staircase that split into two wings. He stopped halfway up and turned to her. Your room is in the east wing. Dinner is at 7. Mrs. Bennet, the housekeeper, will show you around. Anna nodded silently. As he walked away, his footsteps faded into the echoing halls. Alone, she looked around, overwhelmed by the silence. The house was beautiful, but it felt hollow, as if no one had truly lived there for years. Mrs. Bennet appeared, candid and gentle. Do not worry, dear. It takes time to get used to this place. She led Anna to a spacious bedroom overlooking the frozen garden. The room was perfect, too perfect. A king-size bed, velvet curtains, and a single vase of white lilies on the dresser. Anna set her sketchbook on the nightstand and exhaled. What have I done? She whispered. Downstairs, Ethan stood by the window of his study, watching the snow fall. He touched the edge of his wedding ring, expression unreadable. In the reflection of the glass, two people now existed under one name, bound by a contract neither of them believed in. But somewhere, beneath the paper and the signatures, something quiet had begun to stir. Days at the Carter estate passed in a strange rhythm. Anna woke early, made coffee in the silent kitchen, and tried to disappear into the corners of the enormous house. Ethan left before dawn for meetings and returned late, his presence announced only by the faint sound of the front door closing. They spoke little, exchanging polite words about schedules and meals, nothing more. Yet every night at exactly 7, dinner was served in the grand dining room, a space large enough to host 50 people but always set for 2. The first evening, Anna arrived 5 minutes late, nerves tightening her stomach. Ethan was already seated at the other end of the long mahogany table. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. You are punctual by my standards, he said without looking up. I was lost, she replied honestly. It is easy to get lost here, he said, his tone unreadable. The housekeeper poured wine, and silence settled between them. The food was exquisite: roasted salmon, truffle risotto, but it tasted like nothing to her. Halfway through the meal, Ethan finally spoke. I understand you are an artist. Trying to be, she said. I draw mostly people, streets, moments. Why not pursue something more stable? He asked. She frowned. Because art is the only thing that makes me feel real. His eyes lifted from his plate, studying her face. For a heartbeat, she thought he might say something kind, but he only nodded and returned to his food. After dinner, Anna wandered through the halls, stopping at a large painting over the staircase. It showed a storm at sea, a lone ship tossed against the waves. Mrs. Bennet joined her quietly. His father painted that, the housekeeper whispered. Before the accident. Anna glanced at her. Accident? The old Mr. Carter died at sea. That is why the master does not like storms. The next morning, a sleek black car waited outside. Ethan stood by the door, adjusting his cufflinks. You will need to attend an event with me tonight, he said. A charity gala. Appearances matter now. Panic flickered through her chest. I have nothing to wear. He handed her a card. Go to this boutique. Tell them my name. They will handle it. That evening, the transformation felt surreal. The boutique staff fitted her in a navy gown that shimmered under the light. When she stepped into the car, Ethan stared for a moment longer than he should have before clearing his throat. You look presentable, he said. She smiled faintly. That is high praise from you. The gala glittered with champagne, chandeliers, and whispers. Reporters turned as they entered, cameras flashing. Ethan's hand brushed her back lightly, guiding her through the crowd. Smile, he murmured, and pretend you belong. She did. To her own surprise, she played the part perfectly, smiling, answering questions, laughing at strangers' jokes. When a journalist asked how they met, she hesitated only a second before saying, at a bus stop. He offered me his umbrella. The crowd melted into laughter and sighs. Ethan froze for a split second, then smiled, his arm tightening around her waist. Best decision I ever made, he added smoothly. The words, though rehearsed, carried warmth that did not feel fake. Later that night, back in the car, he glanced at her. You handled yourself well. You doubted I could, she teased. Constantly, he said, but there was a trace of amusement in his eyes. The city lights flickered across his face, softening the edges of his usual coldness. When they reached home, Anna stepped out first, the hem of her gown brushing the snow. Ethan followed, holding out his coat without thinking. It is freezing. Take this. She hesitated, then slipped into it. The fabric smelled faintly of cedar and something she could not name. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them was quiet except for the falling snow. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded once. You are welcome, Mrs. Carter. As he walked ahead, Anna touched the coat's lapel, feeling an unfamiliar warmth bloom inside her chest. Something had shifted, subtle but undeniable, the first crack in the wall between them. The days following the gala were different. Something subtle had changed in the air between them, something Anna could not quite name. Ethan still kept his distance, still buried himself in work, but now and then she caught him watching her across the breakfast table or pausing in the doorway before leaving for the office. He never said much, yet there was a quiet awareness that had not been there before. One afternoon, Mrs. Bennet found Anna sketching in the garden room. The old woman smiled. He never lets anyone use this space, she said softly. Perhaps you remind him of someone. Anna frowned. Who? Mrs. Bennet hesitated. His mother, she painted before she passed. Anna looked down at her sketchbook, at the faint outline of the coat Ethan had given her that night. Maybe that was why he had looked so conflicted. Later that evening, a knock sounded on her door. Ethan stood there, holding a small folder. I need your signature on this, he said. She took it, surprised. Another contract? An invitation, actually. The Carter Foundation is hosting a dinner for our investors. You will attend as my wife. Anna nodded slowly. Do you ever stop treating life like a business? It keeps things simple, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The night of the dinner arrived, glittering and loud. The ballroom shimmered with gold light and chatter, the kind of world Anna still felt like she was trespassing in. As they entered, Ethan's hand found the small of her back again. He leaned close and whispered, "Remember, we are partners. Not performers. You do not owe them a version of yourself that is not real." His words surprised her. She nodded, steadying her breath. The evening flowed easily at first. Guests laughed, photographers snapped pictures, and Anna's smile grew less forced as she mingled. Ethan stayed close, his calm presence grounding her. But near the end of the night, an older man approached them with a sly grin. "So, Ethan," the man drawled, "this beautiful wife of yours, where did you find her? I did not even know you liked surprises." Laughter rippled around them. Anna froze. Ethan's jaw tightened. "We met during a storm," he said evenly. "She lent me courage when I had none." His voice held a warmth that silenced the room. For a moment, the joke died in everyone's throats. Anna blinked at him, surprised by his tone. The man laughed awkwardly and excused himself. When the crowd dispersed, she turned to Ethan. "You did not have to defend me. I did not do it for you," he said quietly. "I did it because it was true." On the ride home, the silence was heavy but not cold. The city lights flickered past, casting fleeting reflections on the car windows. At one red light, Ethan spoke without turning. "You handled yourself well tonight." "You sound surprised," she said. "I am," he admitted. "You were brave." She smiled faintly. "Maybe you just never gave me a chance to be." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time since they met, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. When they arrived at the mansion, he offered his hand as she stepped out. She hesitated before taking it. His fingers were warm despite the chill. "Good night, Ethan," she said softly. He paused. "Good night, Anna." It was the first time he had said her name aloud. That night, she sat by her window, the city glowing faintly in the distance. She thought about the way he had looked at her, the quiet sincerity beneath his calm mask. For a man who claimed to feel nothing, Ethan Carter had just revealed more than words ever could. Downstairs, in his study, Ethan stood by the fire, replaying her laughter in his mind. He told himself it was just part of the act, just good optics. But when he glanced at the coat hanging near the door, the same one she had worn that snowy night, he smiled without realizing it. For the first time in years, the house did not feel so empty. Something fragile and unfamiliar had begun to take root, even if neither of them was ready to name it yet. Winter melted into spring, and the mansion slowly began to feel less like a museum and more like a place where life existed. Anna filled the empty halls with sketches taped to the walls, pencil shavings scattered on tables, and small potted plants she insisted on rescuing from the grocery store clearance rack. Ethan pretended not to notice, but Mrs. Bennet often caught him stopping to look at the drawings before heading to work. One evening, as the rain tapped gently against the windows, Anna found Ethan sitting alone in the library. He had removed his tie, sleeves rolled up, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. Papers covered the desk, but he was staring at nothing. She hesitated in the doorway. "Long day?" He looked up, surprised, then sighed. "Long year." She walked closer, her bare feet silent on the carpet. "I thought men like you never get tired." He gave a small, humorless smile. "Men like me are always tired. We just hide it better." For a moment, the room held only the sound of rain. Then she said softly, "Maybe you do not have to hide it all the time." He studied her face, the quiet sincerity in her eyes. "You make that sound easy," he murmured. She shrugged. "It is not, but neither is pretending to feel nothing." Something in him shifted then, a crack in the calm facade. He looked away first, clearing his throat. You should get some rest, Mrs. Carter. You should try that too, Mr. Carter, she replied gently, and left him sitting there, alone with his thoughts. The next morning, Ethan found her in the garden, sketching under the early light. He paused, watching the curve of her wrist as she drew. You have talent, he said quietly. She turned, startled. You think so? I would not say it if I did not. She smiled, brushing graphite from her fingers. Coming from you, that might be the highest compliment I will ever get. Do not get used to it, he said, but there was warmth in his voice now. That night, a storm rolled across the city. The lights flickered once, twice, then went dark. Anna stood by the window, staring at the sheets of rain. A moment later, Ethan appeared with a flashlight. Power is out, he said. Stay close. They moved through the corridors, the sound of thunder echoing through the house. When a loud crack split the air, Anna flinched. Ethan's hand instinctively reached for hers. For a brief second, their fingers locked, and neither of them pulled away. When the lights returned, they were still standing that way. She looked up at him, her heart racing. You can let go now, she whispered. He did, but slowly, as if unsure he wanted to. Later, as she lay in bed, she could still feel the warmth of his hand lingering on hers. The next day, Ethan left for a business trip to Chicago. The house felt emptier than she expected. Each morning, she caught herself glancing at the clock, wondering when he would return. When he finally did, 3 days later, he found her waiting in the foyer. How was the trip? She asked. Predictable, he said. I missed quiet. She laughed softly. You missed control, you mean. He gave her that faint smile again, the one that never quite reached his eyes but always softened his features. Maybe both, he admitted. That evening, they shared dinner without pretense, the air between them lighter. The contract was still in place, the rules still written, but something unspoken was changing. Anna no longer felt like a guest. She was part of the rhythm now, part of the story neither of them had intended to write, and somewhere deep inside, Ethan Carter began to wonder if the life he built on rules and distance could survive what was happening between them. For the first time in years, he did not want to be alone. By early summer, the illusion of simplicity began to crack. Ethan's company faced a sudden crisis. Rumors of fraud and leaked documents flooded the media. One morning, Anna found him in his study, his tie loosened, eyes dark with exhaustion. Newspapers lay scattered on the floor, the headlines brutal. Daniel did this, he said, voice low. He has been waiting for a chance to ruin me. Anna hesitated in the doorway. Can you fix it? Maybe, he said, rubbing his temples, if the board still trusts me. But they will question everything, including our marriage. She froze. What do you mean? If they think this marriage is fake, they can remove me from my position. It would confirm every lie my cousin is feeding them. Anna felt the ground tilt beneath her. Then what do we do? Ethan met her gaze. We show them it is real. That evening, reporters swarmed outside the mansion gates. Ethan's legal team arranged a press conference for the next day. As the lights of the city flickered beyond the windows, Anna watched him pacing, his composure cracking for the first time. You do not have to stand beside me, he said quietly. It is not your fight. She shook her head. Yes, it is. You made me part of this, Ethan. I am not running. The next day, she stood beside him on the stage. Cameras flashed like lightning. The air buzzed with questions. Ethan took her hand, his grip steady, and faced the microphones. You all want to know if this marriage is real, he began. It started as a contract. But what we built is more honest than any deal I have ever signed. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Anna's heart pounded, her throat tight. Reporters shouted questions, but Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. I will not apologize for protecting someone who reminded me what integrity looks like. He looked at her then, not as a prop, but as if she were the only person in the room. Later, when the cameras stopped flashing, Anna found him alone backstage. "You just told the world the truth," she said softly. "You will lose everything." He exhaled. "Maybe. But at least I will not lose myself." In that moment, she realized how much had changed. The man who once saw love as a liability now stood unguarded before the world. That night, the headlines changed again. Some called him reckless, others called him brave. But in the quiet of the mansion, Anna only remembered the way his hand had held her steady, sure, real. The days after the press conference were a blur of chaos and whispers. The board suspended Ethan temporarily, demanding an internal investigation. Investors pulled out. Reporters camped outside the mansion gates, desperate for a glimpse of the man who had admitted to marrying for a contract but defending it as real. Inside, the house felt colder than ever. Anna tried to keep busy, but every room carried the weight of his silence. Late one night, she found him sitting on the staircase, his tie undone, the wedding ring glinting faintly under the dim light. "You should sleep," she said gently. "I cannot," he replied. "I keep replaying it in my head. Maybe I should not have said it." "You told the truth," she said. "That matters." He looked up at her, eyes tired but sincere. "Does it? The truth cost me everything." She knelt beside him. "Then let it. You spent your whole life protecting what does not love you back. Maybe losing it is not the end. Maybe it is the start." For a long moment, they stayed there in silence, the distance between them finally gone. The next morning, she woke to find him gone. A note sat on the nightstand, his handwriting neat and restrained. "Do not worry. I will fix this." Hours later, the news broke. Ethan had walked into a board meeting and resigned, transferring his remaining shares to a charitable trust in Anna's name. Cameras captured his final words to the press: "Freedom is not about power. It is about honesty." Anna watched it unfold on television, tears blurring the screen. That evening, when he returned home, she met him at the door. "Why would you do that?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because it was never really mine," he said quietly. "The company, the name, all of it was built on someone else's expectations. For the first time, I wanted to choose something that was mine." "And what is that?" she whispered. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes steady on hers. "You." The word hung in the air, soft but certain. Anna's breath caught. "Our deal is over," he said, "but if you want to stay, it will not be a contract anymore." For the first time, she smiled without hesitation. "You once said love was leverage," she whispered. "Maybe you just never met someone who would not use it against you." He laughed softly, the sound raw and unfamiliar. "Maybe you are right." Outside, the rain had stopped, and the moonlight spilled across the marble floor. They stood there, no signatures, no paper between them, just two people who had finally chosen to be real. For Ethan Carter, it was not the loss of everything that freed him. It was the woman who taught him what freedom truly meant. A year later, the mansion no longer felt like a fortress. The halls that once echoed with silence were now alive with light, laughter, and the soft hum of creation. Anna had turned one of the unused galleries into an art studio. The walls were lined with her paintings, portraits of city streets, quiet faces, and one canvas that captured a man standing in the rain with his coat draped over a woman's shoulders. Above the doorway hung a small brass plate engraved with the words, "The Art of Belonging." Outside, a spring garden bloomed where snow once fell. Ethan walked through it slowly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He paused at the studio door, watching her paint, her hair messy and her cheeks streaked with color. "You have paint on your face again," he said, smiling. She turned, laughing. "Occupational hazard." He set the cups down, his gaze soft. "They called this place a museum once," he said. "Now it feels like a home." "That is because it finally is," she said, stepping closer. The world had changed for both of them. Ethan no longer wore suits every day. He worked part-time with the Carter Foundation, focusing on scholarships and community art programs. The empire he once protected had become something better, something human. Anna's art exhibitions had begun attracting attention, but she still refused to move from the mansion. "It is not just your house anymore," she would tease. "It is our canvas." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, they stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to wait for the right moment," he said quietly, "but every moment with you feels right." Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, glinting under the fading light. "The first time I gave you one, it was for a deal," he said. "This time, it is for everything that is real." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "You are sure about this?" "For the first time in my life," he said, "I am sure." She nodded, unable to speak, and when he slipped the ring onto her finger, it felt weightless, like a promise already fulfilled. Below them, the city shimmered, alive and endless. Ethan took her hand and whispered, "You once said art makes you feel real. You make me feel the same." She smiled through her tears. "Then we are both exactly where we belong." The camera of life seemed to pull back in that moment. The girl who once fought to stay, and the man who once feared to love, now standing together, unafraid. The contract that began with desperation had turned into devotion, and the story that started with survival ended with freedom. Love, they both learned, was never a transaction. It was the truest kind of home.